Hi, this is Fox back again for sound design tutorials. This is part 4, I think it is now, in our synthesis basics using NI Massive. For that, we're covering the basics of synthesis and we're using NI Massive as our tool to show you everything you're going to need to know. So yeah, part 1 we covered the oscillators, part 2 we covered filter and effects, part 3 we started to getting into the modulation sources and we covered envelopes. Talked in depth about how the envelopes work, how all these different buttons work, what you can use envelopes for, and now we're going to go on to the LFO section. Depending how long it takes me to cover this, I might cover the performer and stepper all in this one. But yeah, for now, we're going to stick to the basic LFOs. You've got these 4 green boxes are all LFOs, are all exactly the same. I mean, when you click on them, one of them says performer, one of them says stepper. But you just choose in this box here, you can have them all as an LFO, all as a performer, all as a stepper if you want. But for now, we're going to use LFO 5. LFO stands for low frequency oscillator. What that means in layman's terms is it's going to use the shape that you choose, and it's going to use this shape, and it's going to the frequency that it oscillates is at a low rate, so low that it's out of the audio range. It's that slow that you can actually hear it pulsing. I'll show you a quick demonstration. We'll just apply it to the amplitude quick, same as the envelopes. If you drag and drop to one of the boxes wherever you want it, the green bar then controls the amount. So in this case, we're dropping it on the amp for oscillator 1. It's the only oscillator we've got turned on. Because we've dialed it negative, this shape of the LFO is going to turn this amp on and off to this LFO shape. Let's turn the sustain level up on the envelope so it stays constant. You can hear the effect that's having. The best way to think of an LFO is like I sort of explained the envelopes. If you picture the bottom is the minimum modulation amount and the top is the full modulation amount. In this case, we've got the full amount is off, the minimum amount is on, so it's almost like turning it on and off. But because the LFO in this instance is a sine wave, it doesn't just go on and off abruptly. You can hear it sort of phasing. If we turn the rate down, you can really hear it. Anything diagonal shape-wise in an LFO is going to give you a more subtle effect than with a square wave. So you're going to hear it gradually coming off and then coming on. The most common one that you're going to be using is a triangle. It's the most smoothest. Misconception is that a sine wave is the most smoothest because you see these curves. But the way you got to think of it is this line has got increase in speeds and decrease in speeds. It's a nice constant as it comes up to the peak, but then it slows down, then speeds up again. Goes to a nice constant speed, then slows down, and speeds up again. A triangle is just a definite one constant to the maximum, one constant down. Yeah, you're generally going to be using a triangle if rhythmic effects. I mean, you can sync this to the clock. We'll go over that later on. Probably getting a bit ahead of ourselves first. Let's go over the overlay of it. This is the rate knob. This is the speed that your LFO oscillates at. The faster the rate, the faster it goes, obviously. Really, really fast. You can still hear it when the rate's on maximum. You can still hear it like turning on and off in effect. So that being said, that is the rate. You have a volume for this LFO. It's almost like a mix knob. more you go to the left, it sort of blends it into the background. You've then got the sync option. You can sync this to the clock. This is like any time-based effect where you sync it to the clock. It automatically syncs to the master clock of your host. Mine's set at 139 BPM in Ableton. You can see up here. If I switch back to scene 1. At the top here you can see my beat is set at 139 BPM. So when it's 1/1, I do believe that's a bar to do every cycle. Let's count it. Yeah, you can hear it's taking 4 beats to do a cycle, so it's like 2 beats up, 2 beats down. And then we change these divisions here, it's going to stretch it out. Shorten it, sorry. 1/4 is 1 cycle every beat. You can hear it pulse into the metronome. And then divisions of that, obviously, you go on from there. 8 is a half note. Quarter note, sorry. Half note, sorry, so every beat and half a beat. And then so on, the faster you get, all the way up to a 32. And then you can go, if you do the divisions the other way then, so this one gets longer, so this will be 4 bars. You get the idea with the ratios, it's real straightforward. 1/1 is a bar. If you change the denominations at the bottom greater, it's going divisions of a beat. And this one, then it stretches it out to bars, so that'll be 2 bars, 3 bars, 4 bars. Real straightforward. The curve select, this is just your basic wave shape. What I was saying earlier, that a triangle wave is the most common one that you're going to use because it's a definite constant up and a constant down, same speed, nice linear, there's no changes in speed. This is sort of how you get your head around FM synthesis, sort of working out which shapes have the phase in a constant speed or whatnot. But yeah, you've got a choice of other shapes as well. You've got all these ones in here. You've got random step one, and these are for more unruly sort of. That's a nice one, the Chinese roof. Some of these bending ones are pretty good. These can be used for, you're not generally going to be using these to modulate in the amp. As I say, you're going to want to keep it nice and smooth, or as close to it as you can. You've got a noise source, which is just crazy. Yeah, these different curves, varying degrees of falls. Like these are like decay sort of ones. These are handy to use. That's a nice one. You can change the phase of the LFO, the starting point of it, by drag kicking on this area and dragging it around. So real straightforward. The internal envelope, we won't worry about that. This is just how fast the LFO performs. You're generally going to keep it dead center. I don't normally mess with that at all. So yeah, let's change it back to a triangle wave. We've explained the phase. If you start halfway through a cycle, you can see what that's doing. It's following the curve, but it's just starting at a different point. This is always your starting point on the left. That's always your ending point of your waveform. Time left to right, and your amount up or down. So yeah, I've gone over the sync mode. This X crossfade, what this allows you to do, you can pick 2 LFOs at once in effect, and you can have a choice of blending them together or playing one or the other. I'll just quickly show you the square wave. Back to talking about the triangle wave as being the most smooth. This one is the most abrupt. This is because this change between what we said, this is like your off position, this is your on position, this is the time it takes to blend between the two. It's instant. This is square wave is virtually like an on-off switch. There's no variance between the amp turning on or the amp turning off. It's either on full or off full, which is, you can visualize that in this shape: on full, off full. Time it takes to go between the two, dead zero. It's automatic. I always use the square wave as an on-off switch. When it's done at slower rate, you can almost use it as a gated effect, or faster even. You can use it to turn things on or off rhythmically. One common thing to do with this, if we turn that off there, if we add some reverb quickly, if we assign an LFO to the reverb dry wet, turn it off and on. This is like side chaining the reverb in effect. This is something I use quite a lot myself. You can hear the reverb coming in and out. Real neat trick. We'll get into other things you can use LFOs for later on. As I say, you've got all these different curves to choose from, and we've explained what square wave does. Saw wave is pretty good to use as well if you just want one continuing curve. Well, the way I normally use saw waves is for downwards risers or upwards risers, if that makes any sense. Because if you look at this when it's in its purest form, a saw wave, it's just one constant sweep from top to bottom. Lovely. And at a slow rate, if you do the rate so slow that it's never going to get to the full amount, something like 1/10, say, over a 4-bar loop, this is going to gradually decrease the volume. If I had it set back to the amp again, this is just going to constantly decrease the volume over time. Let's turn it so it's going positive. So saw waves are handy if you use a long transition, because all they are is phase. There's at no point where it's constantly on or constantly off like a sine wave. You get a small section where it sounds like it's almost on a lot, where it slows right down and then it speeds back up. This is just one constant sweep. If you have a slow rate, if you do it faster, it is like an on-off switch, but it's more like a definite. You just hear a click as the cycle restarts. It's on all the time, but for one tiny instance, it's off. If that makes any sense. Yeah, these basic waveforms, you're generally going to be using these a lot more than any of the other waveforms. I hope I've explained that very well. The mono button. You can save LFO presets as well if you set these up. If you choose like some crazy different waveforms and you get a mix between the two or something with a different rate and you're happy with it, you can save it to your own bank. You can overwrite your patches. These are ones that I've done myself. Modulated sine. Yeah, this crossfade curve as well, it gives you the choice to blend between the two. So yeah, if we have a definite on-off switch of a square wave and the nice smooth transition of a triangle there, you can blend between the two by dragging this crossfade down and bring it all the way over to a triangle. This is modulatable as well, so you could bring in an envelope to control that using some of the techniques that we've done in the last one. If you bring an envelope in, tell it you want it to sweep from top to bottom. Sustain level on full, the attack time is going to tell you how long it takes for that to happen. The longer the attack, the longer it's going to take. You could hear that sort of transitioning between the two. It's a real neat trick. It's a good way of getting some variation in pads and stuff, having different LFO shapes and sort of morphing between the two. The mono button, I don't know what that does if I'm honest. I'll check the manual and I'll do it in the description later on. I think it makes it unipolar rather than bipolar, so it only goes one way, but I'm not sure, so I'll check that later on. If you click on this My LFO bit here, you've got some factory templates, edge sign. The user ones are saved in here as well, a random noise one. But yeah, it's real easy just to push your own waveforms back in and then do what you want. 9 times out of 10, you're going to be using just one waveform. 9 times out of 10 for me, it's a triangle wave. So for that instance, you just want to make sure the crossfade is either to the top or to the bottom. Just pick which one you want, choose your phase starting point, and off you go. One of the most common things that you're going to use an LFO for, certainly with a lot of the new music that's coming in nowadays, dubstep and stuff like that, you're going to be modulating an a filter rather than an amp. So if we pitch this down quick, give ourselves something a bit more bassy. Turn the reverb off. Let's just give it a bit of voices quick just to thicken it up. So if we're applying LFO to the cutoff now, if we think, oh, it'd be nice to have this cutoff phase in and out to give us some nice movement like this. Instead of trying to set an LFO up with exact same attack time, exact same decay time, and trying to loop them over, it's very, very tricky. What you would do is you would choose a triangle LFO. Like I said earlier, it's a constant up and a constant down, lovely smooth. The smoothest one you could ever want to do something like this. Drag it, drop it to the first cutoff box, tell it to go negative however much you want. Why is that going both ways? Yeah. Let's sync it to the clock again. Set it to 1/4, so it's a cycle every beat. Maybe you're going to want the phase to start halfway through. So yeah, this determines the amount of modulation. If you do it to the left, it's going to swing all the way to the left. If you do it to the right, it doesn't really matter with this, because the grey line shows you how much it's going to bounce the other way. When you turn it to sync mode, which we are on now, you get the another option comes up, this positive. Want the restart on. What restart does is it means it restarts this LFO cycle every time you press a new note, which you're going to want. Give you a nice even start to the shape every time. Again, this pause, I don't really know what that is, and I'll check the description again. Most LFOs aren't going to have as many controls as this. Massive being massive, it has a lot more. I chose NI Massive for this purpose because it was a synth that a lot of people are going to have. We are pretty much covering just the basics of synthesis, so I will show you Silent quickly just to show you the controls that you have on that compared to Massive. So the LFO, you've got your wave. This is the choice of the shape. Like in Massive, you've got the choice between the waveforms here. In Silent, it is in this box here. You just click on it, drag it up or down. You've got saw, different variants of pulses. You've got free running LFO, or click it so it's restarting, which is this button here. Let's do it. Let's init a preset quickly. Let's apply a low pass filter again, which we've got. We want to do that same thing that we did in Massive in Silent. Exactly the same principles. You have to set your destinations up differently. In Massive, you just drag it and drop it. In this one, you would choose, in this box here, you would choose cutoff A. These two boxes correspond to this LFO. We'll change it to a triangle wave, which is the nice smooth one that we like. And then you've got the rate, which is the speed, which is this one here, the ratio, or when you're unsync mode, this is the rate. You got the gain, which is this amp. It's all exactly the same. And the offset is the phase, which is this. So most LFOs are going to have the same controls. You can see as I pull the offset down, it start the phase and position starts, so you can hear it starting at a different point. So yeah, I say virtually all LFOs have the same controls. They're just drew differently. Some of them are worded a bit differently, but you're always going to have a rate knob, the option to sync it to a clock, otherwise it's virtually useless. Most of them have an amp, so that this can be modulated again to sort of bring the volume of the LFO in over time. Again, same sort of thing of this crossfade. If we wanted to use that envelope that we created with a long attack, drag it onto the amp of the LFO. Now this envelope is controlling the volume of the LFO, so it's going to bring the LFO in over time. If we go back to Massive. Yeah, this internal envelope, as I said, you can use this as a mod source. You can drag it and drop it to the rate. It's only on things for the LFO, I do believe. So you can apply an envelope. You could apply this internal envelope to the amp. So it saves you using one of the main envelopes at the top, so you could set your own attack time. You can also set this internal envelope to the rate as well, which I have done. It's real neat. What else can we apply it to? You could apply it to this crossfade here. It's just like an extra little bonus envelope that you can use rather than using one of these 4 master envelopes. It's real basic. It's only got an attack and a decay, but sometimes that's all you need. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers a basic LFO. It is a low frequency oscillator. It's an oscillator that resonates at a very low frequency, which is speed. It's nice slow speeds so that you can use it to do some crazy modulations. Most common one's going to be your LFO on your filter. I say panning as well is a good thing to do it for. Do we have panning? Yeah, we do in the oscillator page. Modulating the panning of this is good with an LFO. Global. Here it is. Here's the PAM. Another common thing to do is modulate the PAM. So it swings from ear to ear. Quite drastic when you have it high on the pan, but it gives a nice bit of movement through pads if you just do it slightly. Yeah, all common things you can do with an LFO. I mean, you're going to get a lot more involved as you learn how to use these and work your way through them. We're going to go to the performance section now. I'll try to cover this as well. This has the same general controls as the LFO. You've got your sync that we've already gone through. If you uncheck the sync, you've got the speed of the performer. All this is like a free running LFO, but you can change the waveform as you go along. You can choose how many steps you want by these that are highlighted here. If you drag it down, the ones that are highlighted, it's going to go over. So if we sync this to 1/4, it's quarter notes. Beats, sorry, 1 every beat. This is now going to cycle through the number of sections that you have lit up. So I've got these 2 lit up, just keep running over to this clock. We drag this to the LFO, turn it up a bit. This is saw wave at the minute, as we spoke to in the last one. It's quite a harsh, abrupt sort of starting and stopping. You've got the same functions. You've got this save. You can save these presets when you made them. You can delete them. You can bring your own ones in. Select a performer preset from the factory or user ones that you've created. This section, load curve, this is where you're going to be doing your most of work. This gives you all the sort of waveforms it thinks you want to have. So you can draw your on and off as we had it with a square wave if you wanted. You can give it a more smooth transition with these sinusoidal looking ones. You can get some crazy shapes going on with these double time ones. You can get some real neat. This is what the dubstep guys use to get some nice sequences going on, like with these LFO wobbles and things. So yeah, as I say, these highlighted boxes tells you how many you use. The more you click, it's going to cycle through. It always cycles through them to the clock, and when it gets to the end of the one that you're on, it restarts. So again, if you're doing rhythmical ones, you're going to want to stick to 4, 8, 12 or 16. It can start getting a bit messy if you do a fifth or something. If you run into a kick and a clap and a snare, it's going to sound like it's off beat, it's changing out of tune. You're generally going to want to keep them to, as I say, 4s, 8s, 6, 12s or 16, so they're sort of on beat as such. So yeah, these are your curve selects. You can bring them in. The height is like how much they're going to affect. You can have real subtle ones. You're not going to hear them. This is again exactly how I explain the LFOs and the envelopes. The bottom of this line is your bottom modulation amount. This is your top modulation amount. So at the top here, it's cutting it right off, and at this point, it's well, opening the filter right up if we do it maximum. If we come out of the curve select, same thing again. You've got 2 rows of sequences, same as when you're in LFO mode. You've got the choice between 2 waveforms. You can blend between the 2. That's no different in the performer mode. What this does is same again. You could load up 2 totally different sequences. If we just take it back to the 2, so it's just repeating the 2 sections again. If we load a curve, so we've got the top one as our on-off as a square wave, and we've got this bottom one as a triangle. Virtually the same thing that we had in the last one. Now we can change between the 2. Same thing again, you can use that internal envelope of the LFO to modulate that. How you would do that? You probably can't actually. That internal envelope might only be for modulations. You can choose another modulator to modulate it from the drop down menu, but it doesn't look like you can use that internal envelope. For this case, if you wanted to blend between the 2, you'd have to use an envelope, or just pick the sweet spot where you want manually. Mix between the 2. Performers, they look a mess. People tend to stay away from these, but it's really, really simple when you get used to it. Mono mode again, I'm not sure what that does. I will check the manual. Amp does exactly the same thing. The volume of your LFO. These are global controls for the LFO insect. Amp mod. This chooses whether or not you want the that slider to affect which section you got in. So if we take it to 8 now, if I only highlight every other and have the amp mod on full. Let's do these so they're all the same shape again. Let's load a curve. It's almost like a holding effect, like it's sort of like skipping these out. I suppose it's one way if you've got a big long sequence in. You can hear it turning on and off, and then it's holding at the off point for these 4 that are highlighted, and getting to that one, then starting up again. If I highlight them all apart from the first one. It's like a holding effect when the amp mod's at the bottom, when it's at the top. It has no effect. So that's a real neat trick. You can get some good patterns with that. If we bring the amp mod slider down to the bottom again so we can hear it. Because this value is on at the top and we've got the amp mod affecting them, it's almost like it's having no effect whatsoever. It's just constantly off. Or constantly on. If we alternate them, it should sound like it's off. Very clever, really useful tool to use that. It's not something I use personally myself. I've pretty much just learnt what it did there and then. As I say, this is a bit more involved than other LFOs you're going to come to, or a performer. Other synths like Serum have multi-stage envelopes where you can sort of draw these shapes in yourself. So does Synth Master. I'll just show you that quickly. So yeah, the LFOs in Serum, again, you pretty much have the same controls. You've got your rate, sync to the clock, your rise. This is like the fade in. You can do that with that amp on the Massive one. Delay, you can do that with the envelopes. You can't do that with the LFOs in Serum. Again, there's a few more controls in Serum that Massive haven't got because it's a newer one. Trigger, that's the restart. Sync is the BPM and the anchor. That checks it to the BPM and anchors it to the clock. Triplet and the dot is like in between beat modes. You don't need that on Massive because you can go in between them anyway. But yeah, like I say, you think Serum hasn't got a performer, but you can pretty much just draw these shapes and these different curves in as you want inside Serum. The good thing with Massive is it's always synced to the clock. Each one of these shapes is always on like a half beat or a quarter note, depending where your clock's synced to. In Serum, you have to pick your division yourself and then make sure that you stick as close to these lines as you can. Multi-stage envelopes are a lot more versatile, being able to draw your own shapes in, but once again, I'm digressing. I hope that covers the performer. I might do some individual patches. Showcasing how to use these in more depth afterwards. I think I will do. I'll probably do one showing you how to use LFOs to make a dubsteppy bass, one showing you a performer to make some sort of rhythmical drum loop, and then the last section is the stepper. This is just a step sequencer. Exactly the same thing. It's just like picking the value exactly. So in this instance, the top is all the way on. If we set it to cycle over just this one, it's going to be on constantly. It's going to have no effect. If we get it to cycle to 2, it's going to be on half the time and off half the time. We set the ratio to 1/4 again. That's not doing what I wanted it to do. Snap to grid, mono, stepper, sync is on, amp is on, restart is on. Let's try it with LFO 6. Let's turn that off. Let's turn this to a stepper. Drag it to the cutoff for the filter. strange. Something's gone majorly wrong there. It's not working at all. Let's reload Massive. Let's drag 5 LFOs to the amp. Turn it down. There we go. We'll turn it to a stepper. You can see it cycling through now. Don't know what happened there. You see at the top here, it's cycling through. Top volume is totally off, bottom volume is on. If we increase the rate or sync it to the clock, set it to the 1/4 again. So yeah, all it is then is like I've been explaining before, top is your ultimate value, bottom is your other value. You can draw in exact values of where you want it to go to like flick between different ones. It's almost like creating your own sort of sample and hold LFO. Glide mod is like gliding between the values. It gives you a smoother transition at the top. You're going to hear it. Let's do it to the filter actually. You're going to be able to hear it a lot better. So if we apply a low pass 2 filter again, turn the cutoff up, tell it to turn the cutoff off. And just send everything to filter 1. You get the gist, real straightforward. Again, these little buttons turn on the glide mod or the amp mod. Amp mod does the same thing as the last one. It's like a hold or a rest. You've got the same global functions as I explained in the other one. These buttons turn on whether each step is affected by the glide or not. So if I tell it to glide between the first 2 and then not the rest. Maybe glide between the last pair as well. You get some real neat effects. I'm quite sure if you hold control, or you can get this to snap to the grid. There we go. This snaps to full values now. If you've noticed, it goes up to 12. This is really handy if you want to modulate the pitch of something, because you have 12 semitones in an octave. So if you drag this, pitch it up an octave, so it's controlling a whole octave, as long as you make sure it stops on dead 12. It's almost like an arpeggio. You stick to 5s and 7s and 12s and 1s. Set the rate up. Threes, 5s, 7s, 9s and 12s. Turn the glide off so it's like a definite sort of arpeggioing effect. So yeah, you can use it as a step sequencer. When snap to grid, 12 is at the top, 0 is at the bottom. Playing a whole octave, as long as you make sure your modulation amount is an octave. It's a neat little trick quick, but yeah, I've been going on long enough now. Hopefully I covered LFOs in more detail. Performer and the stepper section is something that is pretty solely too massive. You have step sequencer and other things like the Virus and Synth Master. Again, in Serum you can create these sort of steppy sequences yourself by the LFO, drawing your own LFO shapes in. But yeah, for now I hope that has enlightened you a little bit more to what an LFO is and how you can use it to modulate pretty much anything. Any questions, please feel free to ask if you think I've missed anything. I'll find out what the mono button does and I'll write it in the description later on. But yeah, for now, thanks for watching. Cheers.